Welcome to News with a View, hosted by me, John A. Costa, an expert on nothing, which gives me the ability to give you my opinion of the news that affects us all. And this is a conservative-leaning podcast. I'm a Republican, a conservative, not MAGA. Federalist, believe in the Constitution and all that goes with it, as do Democrats. Isn't that amazing? We have something in common. I want to thank everyone that has recently joined and subscribed to my podcast. All I ask is that you listen, and you don't have to agree. I'd love to hear your comments. Of course, I love when you agree with me, but I'd like to hear all the sides and what you think is a remedy. The problem, and I'll be discussing it today. Today's May 14th. This is episode 70. That means I've done 70 of these shows this year alone. They're all my playlist or my videos. Check either one. I'm fine with them. Today, I'm going to be speaking about more of just the rhetoric coming from the Democrats. And it is pretty noteworthy. I apologize. Today is not as bad as the other day, is me sniffling and hacking and everything, but it's allergy time here in the great state of South Carolina. Just the rhetoric coming out of the Democrats. They are in 100% panic mode. And I can't say I blame them. I can't say that, this should come as a surprise or I'm surprised by it. They just are in a panic mode. They have underestimated everything from the GOP since the beginning of 2023. They have just underestimated because the Democrats drank their own Kool-Aid. They believed their own lies. It's well, if they say it enough time, they believe it. Yeah, and that's exactly what they have done. No plans. I'll get into that. Today, Harris called the Supreme Court ruling of the reinterpretation of the 1965 Voting Rights Act a backdoor to racism. Now, the scream of the Democrats was voting should not be by color of the skin. Voting should not be by race. If you're an American, you vote, and that's the whole ball of wax. That's everything. Can't use color. Can't use color. Can't use color. So now the Supreme Court said, you're right. You can't use color. We agree with you. You can't use color. You can't redistrict lines just on color. And then no, that's not what we meant. No, really? What did you mean? Well, no, we meant that you can't use color. Anyone that's non-black, but the blacks can still use it because we own it. It's crazy world. No one in America who's eligible to vote is going to be stopped from voting. It's just not going to happen. No matter where your line is, you could still vote. And if everyone's Democrat, what do you got to worry about? I realize where they're saying that they're going to lose seats because seats are going to evaporate. They're just going to disappear. They're no longer going to be part of the congressional map. Yeah, yeah. And, you have Harris screaming, and going on about this. This is, Supreme Court. This is why they're wrong. It's rigged. It's, and they're the ones that are fighting about democracy. And they want to tear it down. I mean, you understand that the Democrats screamed about democracy. And then you have people like Jeffries and a lot of Democrats that go, we want to wipe out the Virginia Supreme Court so we could push our agenda through. Forget about the democratic process. We're just going to eliminate it so we don't even have to jump over. We just walk over. What happened to the democratic process? Nebraska. You had Burbank running, and now she's going to. She won the primaries, elected by the people, and then she turns around. And she goes, "I'm not going to run now. I'm going to let this other person. I'm going to support the other person, and screw what you voted for. Screw what you voted for." And this is what goes on. I'm looking for my notes from that. And Dan, I forget his last name. Yeah, but the voting doesn't mean anything to the Democrats. They voted for Joe Biden. We got Kamala Harris. So when I hear the Democrats screaming about democracy, liars. And again, to the very basic core is that we are not a democracy. We are a republic that has democratic processes. But we are not a democracy. When you take the pledge, I pledge allegiance to the Republic of the United States. Right? Not the democratic, no, republic. And you have Jeffries again he is so, this guy is going to be so far removed. You'll never hear from this guy again. And you have all these people, screaming, and he's, more of his violent laced speeches. We're going to crush the souls of the Republicans. When we win, we're going to crush them, crush their souls. Really? Because I'm going to tell you right now, Jeffries, you guys ain't winning. You're not doing it no matter which way you want to lie. The American people are looking and going, no. And you have, now Maryland is getting involved with, wanting to reshuffle the deck, as I call it, with gerrymandering. And I don't like it. I don't like that the Republicans do it. I don't like that the Democrats do it. It's a dangerous road to go down. And it's a dangerous road to go down politically for a party to do. I think the Republicans are going to be on the upper hand of this. And, you have the Democrats who say, like Omar came out and said, we didn't start this fight. Gerrymandering, we didn't start this fight. She doesn't even know our history. There's another one, like AOC. The Revolutionary War was against billionaires of the time. What an idiot. And Omar said that, Democrats did not start this fight. No, actually, they did in 1812. Eldridge Gerry, who was a Democratic Republic, which was the beginning of the Democratic Party. So this has been going on now. Probably historically, the Republicans have always were capitalized on it. I wouldn't say always, but they capitalized on it. So when they go, well, they get the most out of it. Yeah, they did. And then look at all the House seats that opened up. Because they redistrict by color. Couldn't do that. That's not what the 1964 Voters' Right Act, the 1965 Voters' Right Act was about. It was making sure one person, one vote. Not, 7/8 of a vote. But a full vote. One person, one vote. No color, you just had to meet the requirements of the state or federal election board. That's it. So when you hear the Democrats screaming about this, it is all about color. It is all about color. They want it for their color. And the justices in a 6-3 decision said, no, nope. This has been coming for a while, folks. You have the Supreme Court ruling, and then you have redistricting. And as such, they can redistrict. And under state caveats in their constitution. That's what happened in Virginia. Virginia pushed it through, and violated their own constitution, which makes the process null and void. And like I said, would they had followed the rules, their own rules, yeah, the states could do it. If there are no rules about it, then the legislation as a body can push it through and make it happen. And that's what they want to do in Maryland. Raskin, that moron, wants to push the state senator Ferguson to shove through a redistricting vote. And he's Ferguson is Democrat, of course, but he says, I'm not keen on doing this because, one, I don't think we could make this legally happen in 2026 without a challenge. And if we do it and it gets challenged, then that backfires on us politically. And by them remapping Maryland, all the seats would go towards Democrats. And again, if it's allowed, It's allowed. But the way that Raskin wants to push it through, and even the governor wants to push it through, there's a lot of legal hurdles that must be met, and they're having their primaries and everything already in May. It's happening. So they won't be able to do it. South Carolina at first said they weren't going to do it. Now there's talk about it happening under a special session, and Tennessee and Georgia and some other states have already done it, or in the process. Georgia's, I think, is in the process of doing it. Kemp has signed off on it. And of course, California and New York have done theirs, and that's been done and done. But it will be interesting if Maryland tries to do it and violates stuff, and it just comes through as, the panic mode, that Hail Mary pass, if it goes through, it goes through. If not, we've already lost, so what's the difference? And it's a dangerous political path to go down. The blowback could be enormous for all this. And Sonny Olinsky, a whiskey in Maryland representative, is introducing legislation for term limits for the Supreme Court. That will never happen, and that will never pass. And they're for life positions, so they can never be influenced theoretically by politics. And I understand, people, say, well, he's a, Republican and he's a Democrat. That must make them a liberal and must make him an ultra-conservative. And that has really not been the case in so much. There's two of them on the Supreme Court that are uber liberals and about two that are uber right. But I believe that the Supreme Court has done a decent job. Some things I didn't agree that they allowed the president to do. And I said before, I'm a constitutionalist. I look at the Constitution, I read it, I look to see why those words are in that order. Not that just read the words. I look at the context of those words. You go back, there's books and books and books on all these amendments in the Constitution and how they got in there and why they got in there and what the meanings of certain phrases and words were as described and applied. So, and the classic is President Clinton. Is and if has a different meaning in the law than it does in the way we use it in a non-legal presence. And he was right. He made a good point, though. I don't know if he made the point or it was his attorneys that told him, hey, this is what you need to do. But he was absolutely correct. So this is just more Democratic grandstanding. We're going to fight. And there is no plan other than we hate Trump. Trump, 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 Trump. And they're just spinning their wheels. Give me your plans. How are you going to fix things? And those fixes are because of years and decades of Democratic shenanigans. We're here because of the Democrats. We are at this place of time of unbelievable deficits, unbelievable fraud, and just a general failure of the political system dominated by Democrats. 2024 was a turning point. America said no more. No more. And it was close. I'll say that. It was close. But the democratic process put us Republicans in power. And it doesn't mean ultimate power. Remember, they got to represent everyone, not just Republicans, everyone. Democrats have to represent Republicans once they're elected into office. But this doesn't seem to be a concern of the Democrats right now. And I understand they're in the water and they're just trying to grab something to stay afloat on. I get it. It's not a good place to be. But they have to come up with a plan. And not the plan that didn't get them elected in 2024. That's not going to work, guys and ladies. That's not going to work. You had Elizabeth Warren, speaking, oh, America's suffering, and they are. They are. I don't like paying $3.90 a gallon for gas here in South Carolina. I don't like doing that. I don't like seeing, a piece of beef now that costs, $4.99 for a chuck steak, now costing $12 or $14 or $15, and a lot of that has to do with transportation costs and and that all adds up. That all is accumulative. It builds up. So I understand that. We're in a war. We're in a war with a country that came out and said we're going to wipe people out. And we've seen what happens when we just sit back and go, oh, they won't do that. That won't happen. We've seen what has happened. And President Trump had enough of that. And, you got people, well, who are we to tell Iran what they can make and what they can't make? Well, it's a fair question. But when they say the stuff that we're going to make, we're going to use against those people, and if you don't like it, we'll use it against you next. Guess what? I'm going to take your threat 100% seriously, and I'm going to react to that threat. And I'll go, oh, you haven't made it yet? Well, guess what? I'm not going to give you the chance to make it. How about that? And we're paying the price. We're paying the price. Fuel in America, and I get it. No one's happy about it. But you can't question why. You could question why now, but you can't question how could this have happened? How could Trump take this position? Well, he's said that position since the late 1980s. So this is nothing new to anyone, what his position was on Iran. And not so much with North Korea, though North Korea, they're a pain in the ass. But that is more of a regional conflict. And it's really not even a conflict anymore because North Korea said we are no longer looking at reunification. That's not in the cards. Because they said, unless we can take them over, we're not interested in unification. All right. And South Korea doesn't have to build a nuclear weapon because we got them. And I think that what North Korea has learned with Trump is don't don't call this man's bluff. Like Kim will bluff. He'll, yeah, we'll, do this, and then they don't because it's rhetoric. It's rhetoric. But with Trump, they're now seeing this ain't rhetoric. He'll do it. It's a Ronald Reagan type of thing. If I say it, I'm going to make it happen, or I'm not saying it. Walk softly and carry a big stick. Right? All right. So we're in this mess because of Democrats. That we can actually say. And with some help of the Republicans. And they weren't totally blind on immigration. They do what? They knew. But now it has come to the point where we have 30 million people in here that we question. And of those 30 million, 1.6 are designated already from Biden as being people that have to go. But we don't know where they are. So we don't know how to find them. And then there's the people that we have no idea they are here. They haven't caused any problems. They're working or doing whatever. And, they're living here in the shadows, have done nothing wrong other than enter the United States illegally. You can't take something that was the fruit of being illegal and then turn it legal. There's no mechanism in the law that allows that. It's like being, you're just a little pregnant. You are, you aren't. So I can understand where people saying there's a lot of good people here. I get it. But we don't know who these people are. And we don't know if they're good or bad. And I have a door on my home that has a lock on it. I have windows that can open, but I can lock them. And I have security cameras if I want. And I have floodlights if I want. So I could see who's coming into my home whenever. And it's my home. And you ring the doorbell, and I answer through a little thing. Hello, who's there? No, not interested. You can't. No, bye. Off you go. Or I go, oh yeah, sure. Boom. Yeah, come on in. And that's what our borders are. Why is that so hard for people to understand? And just because that person climbed in through my window because my door was locked, or they didn't go through the window, they went through a door that was left unlocked, and they sit on my couch, and now I got to go. Well, they're sitting on my couch. They're part of my family now. I guess I got to take care of them. No, what would you do? You'd call the police, and the police would take that person out of that house and, charge them with trespassing if that was the case. And that would be the end of it. But now you have Democrats saying, no. They're here. They have to stay. They had babies here, so their parents have to stay. And anchor children. No. In worst case situation, those children are citizens. But you as the parent can take them back to your country that you've escaped from or whatever. You didn't come here legally. You got to go back. And you take your children with you. And when they turn 18, if they want to come back here and show their birth certificate, I was born in the United States, you're a citizen. Come on in. Welcome. Welcome home. But doesn't be, well, I want my children to stay here, so I want to stay with them. No, here's your choices. Doesn't work that way. So we see what is going on all over, and the money and the expenditures going to take care of all this. It's killing us. Killing us financially. And at some point in time, people said enough, and that was 2024. They said enough. And Trump said, I'll go and clean the mess up for you. And he's not doing it illegally. Remember, immigration is a civil process. Now, if you're a criminal, there's a criminal process that happens that you're covered under the 4th, 5th, 6th Amendment rights. And that's the way it is, folks. But if you're caught here and you are to have not done anything criminal, well, civilly, we can hold you and deport you. And we do not have to provide you with a lawyer. Yeah, that's the way it works, folks. The right of a lawyer, everyone has a right to a lawyer, you have to pay for it. If you can't, under the criminal code, an attorney will be appointed to represent you. And that's it. Why is that so hard for people to understand? And you have, well, they're going after brown people. Yeah. Yeah. Going after white people, too. If they fall in the fight, we capture them and stop them and find that they're not here legally. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, they're only going after brown people. No, we're just going after the people that we know are here now. There's 100 brown people to 1 white person. Who do you think we're going to grab more of? Oh, they're working in the local car wash down the street. They're working. It doesn't matter. You're absolutely correct. They're working, and they have not robbed anyone. They have done no criminal offense. But they have violated our law under the civil statutes, and as such, are accountable for that. What's so hard to understand about that? You don't get to say, well, the circumstances were I snuck into your country because if I knocked at your door, you'd say no. You could try to use that as a legal basis, but I'm not going to work for you. And you could say, well, I was afraid in my country. I was afraid that the police, the gangs and everything. All right, well, would you have come to the border even under Biden and Obama, and in certain cases under Trump, you got TPS status. So that is the case. That is the matter. That is what counts. So Mr. President, I'll get to you. I know. We've got to remember we're absolutely 12 hours apart here. The idea of making your case when you have snuck into this country, there is no case to be made. The case to be made is saying that I came under TPS, that such situation is still a problem over there. I'd like to stay here with my family. I've been working. I've been doing everything. I'm not really in the shadows. You know who I am. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. And for those people, there should be some pathway following the rules. You know, you hear 5 years, you hear 7 years, you hear this, you're that, no problem. You apply, and if you met those hurdles, then we can say we can accelerate the process. You've been here and working 7 years under TPS and not been on welfare and not been on anything, not caused a problem, and you're working. Absolutely, those people should have a pathway. I have no problem with that. And I think most Americans don't have a problem with that. But it's the people that came here illegally. And yes, I get it. There were a lot of people back in the day that came in here under the wire. Where do you think the term wetback came from? Or WAP? So you know that was Sicilian? Well, not Sicilian, Italian. It was without papers. You just showed up here, but most of them did go through Ellis Island. You showed up without papers, and you know now you got to fill this stuff out. You got to do it, and you know, and there was a little cross-checking here and there, but that was about it. You know, you had to have a sponsor here. You had to show that you were going to be employed, that you weren't going to be a burden to the state. And you had groups out there, Italian groups. You had Jewish group, Hadassah, that were there to help people and to, help them assimilate in while keeping some of their cultural references. You know, we had, Columbus Day. We had, St. Patrick's Day. I hated those parades, hated them all. Because you left all that. That's how I looked at it. You left all that. Now you want to have a 4th of July parade, a Memorial Day parade, Thanksgiving Day parade. I'm all for that. I'm all for that. But your little individual parades, you can apply, you can get it, but you have no right to it. That's all. That's my feeling. Because if you're going to allow that, then you got to allow the Nazis to march. And Black Lives Matter and Acorn and, all these other groups that are out there. Tifa, you have to give them the right. That not saying you can, and because I agree with your politics and not there. And that's why you got to be real careful. But again, we're not a democracy. We're a republic with democratic processes. And when they talk about, you can't have the state, there's a separation of religion and state. No, really, what it comes down to is the state can't have, meaning the government, can't have a sponsored religion. Everyone, you got to be a Protestant. Now, you could be something else, but, you might not get the job over here if you're not a Protestant, because the state allows that, or the state won't hire you, or the state will tax you differently. So there is no state-sponsored religion here. And that's all that means. And for some of you that didn't know this, as just a little fun trivia fact, there was a state that said you couldn't build churches. Churches were not allowed. Places of worship in the public domain verboten. And if you want to know what state that was, I'll tell you. Good old Rhode Island. You could have any type of religion you wanted in the privacy of your home and invite people to your home. But you couldn't have a public display of it. And then that got turned away, and of course, but Rhode Island. So once we became a republic, those problems were all fixed. All right? All right, everyone. Please give to a charity if you can and you're inclined to do it. Just check that charity out. Make sure they're legit. You don't want to become a victim while trying to help victims. If that's not in your wheelhouse, please think about giving to a local food bank. They always need food, and they always need a cash contribution or whatever to help with an immediate situation in front of them. It helps locally in 98% of the cases, and you end up feeling good. You help someone. Please think about saying a prayer. Prayer does work, no matter what a Democrat might tell you. You can leave me a comment on that if you get this far. And if you got this far and you're not a subscriber, or you didn't leave a like, or you didn't leave a comment, please do one of them. Comment on it, like it, join, tell me why you wouldn't join, tell me why you wouldn't listen to me. That's fine. But you should always listen to what the other people are saying, because it's important. It's important. That's knowledge. Knowledge is what, folks? Power. All right. Thank you. Everyone be safe, be well, as I fade to black.